How's it going, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Peterson. This is the place where you can learn how to master your health, your wealth, and your love all in one place. So I hope you look forward to another great episode with another great guest. Before we get started, I do want to remind everybody that the best way to support the show is to simply subscribe, like, and share this episode with your friends. Also, if you want to get more involved with the show, check out our website at pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you have your pen and paper ready to take some notes on some great wisdom coming your way. And I look forward to seeing you guys on the other side of the episode. All right, we are live. Today we have with us Steve McNicholas, award-winning author, coach, consultant, and speaker. Steve with the Molden Consulting Group. Missed that one. Steve, thank you very much for coming on the show today. How you doing?
I'm very, very well, Gabe. Thank you very much, and thank you for the invite. I'm very, very happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you here. To get us started, why don't you tell everybody, who you are, what you do, and how you got started down that path in the first place?
Oh, of course I will. How long have we got? I'll try and keep it sort of short and concise, Gabe. So what do? Well, eventually, I'll sort of work from this point and go backwards rather than the other way in terms of telling everybody, what I did when I was 5 years of age all the way up to now. Right now, Gabe, for about the last 2 years or so, on the back of a couple of books that I wrote about the sort of science and the sort of sequence behind success, personal success. Because throughout my corporate career for 3 decades, as much as, corporate was my job and I had various sort of senior executive and leadership roles internationally, actually, including some work in the US several years ago. I always had a personal passion for leadership, helping people understand how to lead. And then that ultimately transpired into how to succeed, not only professionally, but also personally. So I was very, very lucky 2 or 3 years ago to step away from corporate life, write the books. And then clearly what the material contained in the books was clearly compelling because I got more and more people asking if I would come and speak about it. The speaking business then went internationally. So I got to speak in lots of countries. And on the back of that, coaching and development and working with teams and indeed individuals is what transpired. So prior to that, my life was in corporate. I worked in banking. I worked in private equity. I live in the UK, obviously, as you can probably tell by my accent. I have 2 children, Molly and Daniel. And for those who heard you just a second or two, that's why my company is called Molden. We are a small company, but I named it after the 2 children, bearing in mind, hopefully, the books are just an example of the legacy I hope to leave them. So does that help? Does that give you a flavor of the guy talking to you?
Yeah, no, I love it. And I like your company name. Actually, before we hopped on, I forgot that your last name was McNicholas, and I was searching Steve Molden, and I was like, "Where is Steve Molden?" But now I know it's the name of your children. That's great.
Indeed, it is.
So you got started in corporate. You went through the ranks in banking. You got into executive positions. You were doing a lot of leadership, and then you decided, it had been enough time. You'd done your time, and you switched over to doing your own consulting, your own leadership development business. You got really interested in the topic of success because success and leadership really go hand in hand. And so now you're here today. You're Molden Consulting Group, and you do conferences, consulting, and you write books, obviously. And it seems like those books are doing pretty well. So let's jump into the topic of success. That is your focus here. And so I have a few questions for you. This is something that everybody is always interested in, is how to find more success in their own life, be it personal or professional. The habits are usually the same. It doesn't really matter what goal you're going after. So to begin, what is the habit that you see? I know this is kind of a difficult one to answer, but what is the habit that you see contribute the most to people's success, or the one that you see that people mostly overlook that they need to be adding to their life?
Well, what a great question. I hope the any subsequent question not as difficult as that one, Gabe. But so let me tell you, the second book I wrote about was called The Success Code, and that came about from several years really of whilst I was sort of working professionally, I also, thanks to my travels, had the opportunity over several years to speak to, I don't know, maybe several hundred, maybe approaching 800 individuals all over the planet who without doubt would be classed as successful. It might be in business, it might be personal achievements, it might be things that they've done physically that, you know, all of us would say, wow, that is a wonderful achievement. And so I began to ask these people over the years, what do you do? How do you do it? When do you do it to achieve success? Now, whilst I was sort of undertaking that research over the years, fundamentally the research that formed the basis of both books, but particularly the Success Code, I took a look at my own journey, my own sort of professional career and journey as well. And, you know, we won't use up time, but tough moments in my life at various points. I didn't have a wonderful education, and yet I went on to achieve some incredibly senior roles in some huge organizations. And you think, well, how did that happen? And then when I think about the individuals who I spoke to over the years, I noticed, Gabe, that each of them followed exactly the same process. Now, they might have had different labels and they might have called things different sort of strategies or different approaches, but fundamentally, all of them did ballpark the same set of steps or strategies or mindsets. They just call them different things. Eventually, I saw that pattern, that sequence, and began to think, there is a pattern here, there's a code, hence the Success Code. Now, it's 7, you know, the process is 7 steps, and I know your question was, what's the one? And if I was to pick one compelling theme that sort of I eventually labeled something called the easiness conundrum. And what I mean by that is I think success is easy. Because I think no matter what you want to be successful in, there are thousands of clues available to you. People have been there, people have done it, and now thanks to the internet, with 2 or 3 seconds on Google, you can find all of the answers for anything and everything to be successful in. But here's the conundrum. If that's easy to do, it's easy not to do in terms of execution. And I think the most successful people on the planet are the ones in the middle. They choose to do the easy to do. Whereas the vast majority of us will find excuses, will find reasons not to, will have attitude or mindset challenges that will prevent us. And that's my overarching sort of take on success. It is, don't get me wrong, it takes hard work and it takes effort. But the actual tasks themselves, I think, are easy. You do this, then you do this, and then you do this. Now, each of them on their own are easy, but they are so easy not to do, thanks to the distractions that we have in life. So that would be, yeah, the Success Code is 7 specific strategies in order, and I can, you know, I'll reference them if we get an opportunity. But if there was be one thing I would call out that was uniquely consistent with everyone, is their ability to manage that conundrum.
Awesome. I love that. Actually, once that, you know, the beauty of doing this at home is that you get to have your dogs in the yard, and mine is barking right now. This is a live podcast, and I apologize. I'm going to close the window.
About it.
Okay, we're back to action.
At least we know it's real. We know it's real.
Yeah, there you go. So you're talking about the easy conundrum, and I think that's super relevant because I mean, I'm looking at anything I do, even this podcast. The steps to actually get it done are, you're right, they're simple. It's not like rocket science. You just have to do it. The hard part is just doing it. And I love that you said that, because it kind of takes success and it puts it into the realm of normalcy, and it puts it into a realm that's easily accessible to anybody. But you just have to actually go through the steps of doing it, whether you want to lose weight, whether you want to grow your business, whether you want to learn a language. You just have to go through those steps day in and day out until you've reached your goal.
Absolutely.
So I love that you said that. You mentioned there are 7 other steps. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't just quickly hit on each one. So why don't we just go through your Success Code not real quick, as long as.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And like I said before, it's 7 unique sort of steps in the sequence, and they usually do happen in the sequence I'm going to take us through sort of momentarily. Sometimes, individuals will have approached things slightly different, but the vast majority, and if I go through the 7, it starts with ownership. So again, I might repeat myself a few times here. Not once did I meet somebody who you and I would ever class as successful who didn't take complete ownership for their decision making, for their activities, for their actions. If they were going to succeed or achieve achieve greatness, it was going to be down to them. And there was never ever really any references to blame or excuses. It was down to the individual. So step 1 of the success code is take ownership. Step 2, and feel free to sort of interrupt if you want me to clarify anything. Step 2 talks about purpose, clarity of purpose. What's the why? What's the deep-seated reason? It's never a target. It's never an objective. It's the why. Now, most of us will call it our purpose, which sounds a little bit spiritual, and in some instances it was spiritual, but each of them had a very clear, deep reason why success was going to happen. Because when the challenges and the barriers and the resistance and the negativity came, without that rocket fuel, that personal rocket fuel to push them on, then invariably they would break down or they would struggle, like most of us do. When the pressure's applied, if we don't have that purpose, that compelling reason to push us forward, then typically, a bit like resolutions that we make at the start of every year, and then, we give them up after a week or two. It's usually because they're not underpinned by purpose.
Interesting. So, not to jump in here, we're only at 2, but something kind of popped up into my mind. You mentioned that that these steps are consecutive, that you kind of start at 1 and then you go to 7. It's interesting that you put purpose before ownership. I totally agree that purpose and ownership are super important to really following through with anything that you want to achieve. Why did you put purpose after ownership?
Literally because of the research that the most common sort of way of seeing success explained to me. And even when I think about my own situation, like I referenced earlier, that I found that purpose came, momentarily second. And, we're not talking weeks apart here. We're talking within seconds, that once the person accepted it was down to them and it was down to their decision making and the actions that they would take, then it typically found that the purpose and the drive that we're referencing here was a natural progression, rather than, well, I'm purpose and my purpose is to save the world, but I'm going to wait for everybody else to do it. Well, that's not ownership. Ownership was saying, this is down to me. And so I suppose what I'm saying is, they are very, very similar. But when I had to define the sequence in sort of numerical order, it felt natural to start with ownership before moving to purpose. Absolutely.
All right. That makes complete sense. You have to start with taking ownership, with saying that this is what I'm going to be doing. It's my responsibility to get it done. And at that point, your purpose kind of kicks in.
Yep. And even at this point, Gabe, 2 steps of the 5-step strategy, I don't think either one that we've explored here are difficult to do. No, it's back to this easing conundrum, isn't it? It's it keeps obviously resurfacing every minute of every day in our lives.
Yeah.
I don't think they are difficult to do. But if you ask the vast majority of people today, do you own your success and tell me your purpose? They look at you blank, because I don't know my purpose and I don't know what accountability and ownership is. So, hey, presto, the sequence, the code isn't alive in that individual.
Absolutely. So what's number 3?
Number 3 is, we're getting into goals now. So number 3 is goals, but here's the difference. Everybody has goals. Everybody claims they have goal setting methodologies. In the success code, I call it goal systemization. Okay. And it's the systemization is the sort of insight I really want to emphasize for people. And what I mean by systemization, again, these individuals, these teams, these organizations that I was lucky to speak to, they're more obsessed about the systemization beneath the goal than the goal itself. Because the belief of these people is, if the systems, if the strategies, if the to-do lists are good, robust, and disciplined, they'll take care of the goal. get focused here, and the goal takes care of itself. When you become obsessed with the goal, you know, the systemization is non-existent. So I hope that makes sense, that, you know, you can have a goal to run a marathon in 5 hours, but it's the systemization, the diet, the running plan, the training plan, the buddy, and everything else that goes with health and fitness of running 26 miles. That's what gets the goal achieved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the thing that jumps into my mind, I still am a huge proponent of habits, and you know, getting habits down in your own life. And when I think of something like, if I want to get into really good shape, you know, usually when the common knowledge is to break a goal down into, you know, its proponent steps, and then, you know, which still works, but to me, what really works is figuring out what I need to do each day. Something that is repetitive, you know, it is systemized, and then that I can just do it, rather than, you know, I need to work out, you know, 100 times in order to do this, and then trying to break it down over a certain number of months. Just say, I need to work out every day, and I need to do this every day, and then getting on the treadmill or whatever it is, and just getting it done, breaking it into a system, something that can't really be broken.
Absolutely. That's systemization. You're living it, you're doing it, you're proving it, Gabe. So no wonder you're successful.
I mean, and obviously this also works in business. You're talking yourself, and even in my, so I'm in real estate, on the other side of this, and we do this with lead generation. We say, you know, we're just going to hit these number of people every day, and eventually something's going to happen. So I like it. I'm fully committed right now. Let's hear number 4.
Well, number 4 is, again, it's not very difficult, this concept you see. I don't think any of them are. It's about taking action. So you take ownership, you form your purpose, you build your systems. Well, so what? Without step 4 and the sort of success code block number 4, as I call it, it's about taking action. And we have innumerable distractions and reasons not to take action. Or we begin to take action, a bit like the example that you've seen, and we don't see this amazing success happen within a few days or a few weeks, and guess what? We give up. We think, it's not meant to be. You know, I'll go off looking for the shiny new thing, instead of sort of the discipline or the habit that you referred to, keep taking action. And the analogy I try and use this, particularly when I'm on stage speaking, is the bamboo tree, the Chinese bamboo tree. Don't know if you understand this, but when you plant the seed for the Chinese bamboo tree, you know, you've got to keep watering it. You've got to keep looking after it. And this tiny seed, typically for 18 months, 2 years, a tiny little sprout will appear. But if you keep looking after it, underneath the surface, some of the most strongest fibrous root systems are being built and being developed. And then within 2 or 3 weeks, the bamboo tree will shoot, you know, 60, 70, 80 feet in the air. Wow. But it can only do that because the roots are so deep and so strong. And that's why you have to keep taking action. So many people stop just when that bamboo is about to rocket. So, you know, I talk about in the book several strategies and techniques to help you keep taking action, but that's the 4th code block.
I love it. I love it. It reminds me, well, a lot of things, especially, I mean, even for podcasting, the statistic is the average podcaster, person creating the podcast will end after they've created, I think it was 7 episodes.
Is that all?
Wow. And then they just get, I don't know, bored or they just lose drive or whatever. But I mean, that's it. I mean, to me, the action and the previous one, systemization, really, you know, ring true, because that is what it's all about, is just doing it over and over, getting that, you know, finding the system and then just taking action over and over again until you finally see the results, see that bamboo tree shoot up into the air.
Well, that's what I found, Gabe, over several years, nearly a decade. I kept thinking, well, someone is going to eventually tell me the secret of success, you know, the real secret that nobody else knows.
Yeah.
And there isn't. It's this, you know, methodical, repetitive, disciplined approach. Clearly, you've got to get your head right. You've got to get your heart right. You've got to know the why. But then it just becomes about hard
plodding
work.
On.
Yeah. Yep. And when the distractions come and the reasons to quit are there, and they are, you know, 95% of us will quit. The 5% that keep going, we will always invariably label them as successful.
Awesome. I love it. So speaking of five, what is the fifth?
So 5 is when we get a little bit into sort of, I call it, it's called about erasing limiting beliefs.
Okay.
It's sort of, you get past the action stage, you're making progress, but your mind is starting to fill your thinking with doubts, with fears. It's almost like weeds in the garden, that if you don't apply the weed killer and keep on top of these limiting beliefs, then they can sort of strangle and sort of prevent success happening or make it even harder. So again, I talk about a number of strategies here. And again, being very transparent, the most successful people in the world have the same doubts, the same worries, the same concerns, the same fears that you and I do. They just have an ability to recognize it as a limiting belief and to push past and to see it as that, and to, using my analogy again, to apply the weed killer so that the weed dies down and they can keep moving forward. So step 5, code block 5, is about erasing your limiting beliefs, because you've got to keep doing it. It's never, I don't know about you, but the weeds in my garden, every time I think I've got rid of them, next summer they come through the cracks again, and you think, right, I thought I got rid of them, but they'll keep coming. You got to keep treating them.
That's the thing about limiting beliefs, is that they're very insidious. Like, you don't really realize they're affecting you until all of a sudden it's affected your actions, it's affected your results, and in my opinion, and my experience with them, is I don't really notice that it's a train of thought until a little bit down the road. And so you gotta pop up right when you hear it, right when you hear that voice in your head, and be like, no, that's not going to work here.
It is, but it's just recognizing it. That's the big thing. It's recognizing that, these limiting beliefs, they have no substance. They have no basis. They're just thoughts that, are growing in our head and continue to grow. So unless we apply some sort of treatment, then they will, they'll take over, and they'll squeeze all the positivity out of you. So when we move on to step 6, then you just referenced it earlier. Actually, it's step 6 in terms of the success code for me. I call it solidifying progress. And this is about habit and discipline, Gabe. Again, you referenced it earlier. It's having the daily sort of repetitive, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's meditation, whether it's exercise, whether it's reading, whether it's self-development. It doesn't matter. It's the discipline and the habits that continue to either fuel your mind, your body, usually both, to give you the best possible chance of maintaining the process or maintaining the success code. So code block 6 is very, very simply solidify your progress daily. That's the big thing. When I said to these people, yeah, great habit, I quite like that habit, I'm going to make a note of that habit. How often do you do that? Every week? No, every day. Now, you can't do it every day. Monday to Sunday, every day. And it, again, You think, I've interviewed 700 people, and 700 people told me you've got to have good habits and good disciplines every day.
That's got to be something to it, right?
Clearly, there's a success clue being left there.
It reminds me a quote. I don't know where it came from, but I've always really liked it. It said, 99%'s a bitch, 100%'s a breeze. And it's just saying,
I like that.
If you can just do it every day, if whatever you're trying to achieve, just do it every single day, and it'll be a lot easier than if you say, oh, I'll do it every other day, or oh, I'll do it every week. It's surprising once you make something into a daily habit. It's easier than if you were, in my experience, making something into a daily habit is easier in the execution of it than it is if you were to do it once a week, once a month, something like that.
Yeah, and you talked about it earlier about habit, and that's the label we're giving it. But, when you think about compounding habit, when you think about compounding sort of savings on your sort of check account or your savings account, you earn interest upon the interest upon the interest. That balance grows super quickly. What's the same with habit? I think you do a good habit, you do a good habit upon a good habit upon a good habit, and eventually, it compounds to be this powerful, powerful activity every day that, really makes a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of another thing that I learned. I can't remember which book it is. I should start writing this down. But they're talking about how there's real, obviously, you've interviewed 800 people, so there's real science behind this, and it's also backed by science in that they can show that there are neural pathways in your brain that once you do them over and over again, it's like a cart going down a dirt road. It keeps going, and the divots get bigger and bigger until there's really only one way for the cart to go. It's just down those divots, and that's kind of how your brain works when you do habits.
You're absolutely right. Totally right. So for 3 years now, I've had a routine every day when I come into my office at home here or wherever I am in the world, a hotel room. I'll always try and sit about 6:45 for 20 minutes and meditate. Whether it's just being quiet, whether it's just me with my thoughts, it doesn't matter. But now I just don't even think about it. It's 6:45 every day, wherever I am in the world. And with COVID, I tend to be at home at the moment. I will sit quietly and just reflect. And I feel energized, I feel empowered, and that's just one example of the power of habit.
Absolutely, and I'm jealous. I've been trying to get meditation to be a habit, but I haven't been 100% committed, and so I haven't gotten to that stage.
Me neither. I still think of other thoughts whilst I should be sort of emptying my mind. I've still not become a guru, but I just enjoy that 20 minutes because it's just my time.
Absolutely. So
which leads on to step 7.
Yep, one last step here.
And it is very, very simply survey the previous 6 and go again. So it's about this constant refinement of the 6 code blocks. The 7th one, again, I talk about a number of strategies where you can sort of make the previous 6 even better, even stronger, even more robust, even more effective. And that's the success code, Gabe. Again, not one of those 7 did you look at me as if to say, I don't quite understand that. It's simple, executionable, habitual, if I could say the word, systemized. It's easy to do, but it's damned easy not to do. And right between the two is where success is.
Awesome. No, I love it. And so I'm just going to go over them real quick for everybody listening and watching. So we got number 1 to be ownership. Have 100% ownership and commitment in what you do. Number 2 is purpose, to know your why. Number 3 is goals, and specifically systemization of your goals. Number 4 is just taking action. Number 5 is erasing your limiting beliefs. Number 6 is solidifying the process and making a habit. And number 7 is, I actually forgot how you phrased this, but I wrote down reflect.
Yes. So in the success acronym, the letter S, I actually called it survey and go again. Okay. It's the only word I could come up with S to fit the acronym, to be fair, but effectively it's the same word, isn't it? Just refine, review, reflect, and then boom, you go again, round and round and round. And that's Perfect. That's what 65, 70,000 words in the book, but effectively, Gabe, it's 7 sequence steps like that.
I love it. We got the Cliff Notes here.
Indeed, we have. Yes, we have.
Awesome. Well, I love it. There's nothing that I can point at that's not right. It's obviously looks like a very comprehensive system to achieve your goals and to get to the places you want in life. I want to change gears just a little bit here. We've talked about success. We've talked about, you've interviewed over 700, 800 people and figured out the steps that require success. And that was your success code. So now let's move on to the leadership aspect of your business, of your consulting business. Mm-hmm. Leadership is a big, it is super important when it comes to creating success in an organization. When you want to drive an organization in a direction and get results, leadership is one of the most important things. In today's world, we are in COVID time, so everybody is kind of, we're stuck inside. I'm working from my home. Most other people are working from their home as well. How do you kind of see, or I guess what advice could you give to people who are expected to be leaders, but are restricted by the screen? So we have a lot of telecommuting, a lot of remote work now. How do you see leadership playing out in the remote world that we live in today?
Yeah, what a great question. And I make no apologies for it. I will reference part of some of the success code sort of methodology that we just touch base on, because you can imagine, even when I talk to leadership teams, or even when I work with individual leaders, invariably it is their desire to be successful, which is why I tend to get hired to work with them. So therefore, we might package it differently, we might label it differently in a leadership context, but it still fundamentally boils down to some, if not all, of the 7 steps that we've just taken there. And if I was to pick one, which I'm seeing really almost on a daily basis with the clients I work with, and this is internationally, so it's not just a UK issue, it's not just a US issue. I was on a call earlier this morning with some clients in Australia, a leadership team there. And more than ever in these times of uncertainty, in these times of fear and doubt for employees or colleagues that sort of are looking to leadership, it's going to come back to this purpose point that we emphasized earlier on in the call, Gabe, that organizational leaders have to be ever more clear, ever more purposeful in terms of why their business exists, and just as importantly, why the individual members of their team play a critical part in making that business successful. Because when I sort of pick away with leadership, particularly at the start of our relation, sort of if we're working together as a team or as a group, as an individual, I will typically, I'm fairly blunt, as you can probably tell, I don't sort of, people don't hire me for motivational high fives or cheerleading. I get hired to get straight to the problem and to help that team or that leader sort of succeed. And if there's one fault, particularly in crisis, which is what we're in now, or change, which is probably a safer word to use that we're at now, it's the leaders that are absolutely critically clear on their purpose, their strategic purpose, their business purpose, whatever we want to call it. They are the ones winning. They are the ones leading. They are the ones that people feel trusted in, feel compelled to follow, because the pictures that they're painting their people are giving them comfort, assurance, and clarity on, we're going to get through this, and we're going to get through this because, and it's that purpose. Yeah, we keep coming back to the P word. You can have a purpose in a professional context, of course you can, but the leader that talks about what's in it for me, what's in it for you, what's in it for our clients, they're the ones that are getting people to sort of believe and push on. The leaders that take the opposite course and want to blame COVID, want to use it as an excuse, want to sort of distract themselves with this sort of fear and worry, they're the ones I don't think are leading. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a few things popped into my mind. For one, I kept thinking about the ownership code block that you mentioned in your success principles, and how that's so important. I mean, you would definitely, the leader needs to be taking ownership in the results even before they have the purpose. But on top of that, you mentioned they need to communicate the purpose to the individuals, and that, in my opinion, is so important because when you're working remote, when you have a distributed team, it's so easy to not be connected to the people that you're working with. And I used to work in corporate as well, and one of the things that I liked the most, that that kind of drove me to go to work, was my team. I liked being with my team. I really got energy off of working together. But then, if it was a distributed team, if we didn't get to interact on a daily basis, it's really difficult for those individual members to kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing. And so being the leader, just keep hitting that point home, just saying, this is why we're here. This is what we're doing. We're doing a very important job. You individually are doing a very important job, and this is how you fit into the entire picture. That is, it's a very important part of the remote team environment that we're working in these days.
You know what, Gabe? I was very lucky about 12 years ago, maybe not that far, 11 years ago, to go and study at Harvard for a period on some executive leadership program that my employer at the time must have thought, I must have had some talent. Let's send them across to Harvard, let the professors there. And there was a professor, I will never forget him, Professor Rogerson, who he asked the class at the end of our we worked together for about 6 months. I was in the US for a week, then I'd come back to the UK for 3 weeks. But the program was about 6 months, a wonderful experience. And at the end of it, he gave us our final paper to write. And it was, write down and explain the purpose of leadership. And he just left it at that. And 26
Damn, man, that's a hard one.
Do you know what I mean? 26 sort of so-called talented individuals from all over the planet sort of looked at each other as if to say, well, what's the answer to this then? And you had a few weeks to submit your paper, and whatever I wrote down must have been okay because I got a good grade for it and I passed. But that it's such a simple question, but many leaders in many organizations would struggle to answer it. And therefore, if they struggle, then what about their people? So even more in uncertainty and crisis is that clarity needed. So that's why probably it was the most obvious answer to your question. That's the one thing I would I'd be suggesting to leaders to work on now. You're right about ownership. Own the problem, own the challenge, but be very clear about what your organization exists for and why, and make sure your teams believe in it.
Absolutely. No, I love it. So we try to keep these episodes around 20 to 30 minutes is the goal. So
Okay.
I'm gonna move us along here just a little bit. I have absolutely loved everything you've said so far, so I appreciate that. There are some quick questions that we usually ask at the end of the episode. For one, we love to hear stories, and you've traveled internationally. You've gone many places. You've had a lot of experiences. So, if you could just pull one story that you thought was kind of fun out of your hat, and convey that to us. What is that story that you grabbed?
Oh, that's pressure. One story. And
If you don't have one, we can move on to the next question.
No, I'm going to sort of tell very briefly. I don't know whether you guys in the US, envelopes, things that sort of letters are posted in, and of course, you know what envelopes are. Well,
Yeah.
in the UK, when you get a brown envelope, that's usually because the tax authorities want some money off you, or you've got a bill to pay. You never ever get good news in a brown envelope, Dave.
Okay.
So when they arrive in the letterbox, then you know it's a challenge. Well, at 3 points in my life, a brown envelope was handed to me. When I was 17 years of age, when I had a wonderful opportunity at a very, very good school in the UK, but I blew it. I wasn't a good student. I kept thinking I'd do it next year. I'll study again next year. And I blew it. I left school with little or no qualification, didn't go to university, and my grades were handed to me in a brown envelope.
Oof, that's a slap in the face.
Now, 20 odd years later, when the global recession in 2008 happened, I was running a big UK bank, or a significant portion of it, living the dream, the nice car, the great salary, all the perks that go with it. We just had 2 young children, and I got a brown envelope which said, you were redundant. You had no job.
Yep.
And
Jeez.
fast forward another 15 years, the third brown envelope in this story was the brown envelope I handed to my sort of organization at the time to say, I'm quitting, I'm going to write books, and I'm going to go and live my purpose. So those brown envelopes, those moments in our lives, Gabe, are when success is within our grasp. So you see, at 17 years of age, in a tough city in the UK, I could have crumbled. But I let my mum and dad down, and I had a purpose. I had a passion, which was to go on and be the most successful individual I could be. And without any education, 20 odd years later, I was running a huge organization. The second brown envelope, I had 2 babies. We had lots of debts. We had a big mortgage, and suddenly I was unemployed. But the same instinct kicked in, which was to find purpose, take ownership, and move forward. So the question I'd ask any of your guys watching today or listening to us is, what do you do in your brown envelope moments? We all have them. And what we do and how we operate on those moments are exactly when success is within our grasp.
I love the imagery that the brown envelope kind of conveys, is that it's a moment where you have a decision. I can't remember there's some Japanese symbol. I think it was crisis in Japanese is representative of both danger and opportunity. The Japanese symbol, and so it's really, I love that you use the brown envelope to kind of give that meaning. Is like somebody hands you a brown envelope. Okay, something bad happened, but this other thing is also about to happen. This good thing. I can take this bad event and turn it into a great opportunity in my life. So that's awesome.
You can, if you take ownership and you say, this is down to me, I'm going to then amazing things can happen. Too many of us crumble and think, it's over. But, if you apply some of the stuff we've talked about today, you can grasp those moments and go boom.
Absolutely. The next question I always ask is, we get information from so many different areas, from the internet, from our friends and family, and also from books. I love to hear book recommendations. You wrote your own book, so instead, usually I ask, what are 2 books, business book, and then any other type of book that you really enjoy. I'm going to ask you to plug one of your books, so you can, get that out there, and then also one other book that you really like to.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'm going to be very, very sort of, what's the word? Sort of selfish. My first book was a book I wrote with a guy called Jack Canfield. Many of your sort of listeners will be. Yeah, I was very proud to be invited to co-author a book with Jack at the start of my sort of professional consulting career. And the reason that happened is because of a book that he wrote. Is a multi bestseller, Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Mm-hmm.
Many of millions of copies have been sold across the planet, and it's the book I always sort of go back to. It's a collection of short stories that just fill your heart, fill you with hope and awe and wonder and belief and confidence. So on a personal level, I would always go back to Chicken Soup for the Soul. And on a business level, I would highly recommend a book called The One Thing.
Yeah.
I think the author's called Gary Keller, I think. But Gary talks again about organizations finding the one thing, or individuals, the one thing that matters most to you, and actively and passionately pursuing it. So they would be my 2 recommendations, Gabe.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah. And those are both really good books. I like Chicken Soup for the Soul. Long time ago that I read it, but it was a good one. Awesome. So going on, I mean, you've given us tons and tons of wisdom in this episode, and I appreciated it. And I guarantee everybody listening and watching did as well. You need to receive as well. So if someone were to bring you something, what would you want to receive?
Wow. I just think I would. God, that's the hardest question you've asked me. What's the one thing I would want to receive? I very personally love, kindness. I am becoming more and more aware of sort of the spiritual aspect of our lives. I don't want to get too deep on it, but certainly as a parent over the last sort of decade or so, I've become more and more aware of what's really important in life. Clearly success can be measured in so many ways, not just materialistic. It can be emotional. It can be a lot of sort of ways. So what I ask most of the time is kindness, consideration, and love.
I love it. And you, you run a consulting business and a speaking business. So if someone did want to hire you or to get involved with your organization, what is the roads that they would take to do that?
Yeah, the website it's got everything on it. It's got the speaking videos, and it's got all the contact forms. It's got all the ways you can contact me. So the website address for everybody, Gabe, is Moldan, MOLDAN, consulting, all one word, moldanconsulting.com. And on there, you will sort of be sick of the sight of pictures and imagery of me, but more importantly, there's lots of material on there about the programs, the coaching programs, and also how I can be sort of contacted to speak as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And they can hire you for executive coaching, speaking opportunities. And then I'm sure they could also get the book that we've referenced, with the 7 steps to success.
That's on Amazon, both in the UK and the US. That's called Unlocking the Success Code, which is what you and I have spoken about. And yeah, you're right. My coaching programs are fundamentally very simply, I work with a leadership team through a certain program, and I work with individuals privately through a separate program. 2 coaching programs, that's it. The speaking work, now with the COVID and the travel restrictions, it's almost all entirely virtual at the moment. So I'm speaking internationally at the moment, but without leaving my home here in the UK. But we're doing that over Zoom or whatever platform that the client asks. So it's keeping me busy. It gives me the chance to live my passion, which is try and inspire and help others. And I'm loving it.
Awesome. I love it. So if you want to get in contact with Steve and hire him to do coaching, consulting, or to get his book, you can go to moldanconsulting.com. I will also put his LinkedIn URL in the show notes. So if you'd like to click through there, you can grab that. Steve, again, thank you for coming on. I appreciated it so much. For everybody who's here on this journey with us today, thank you guys for showing up. Again, the best way to support the show is simply to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Other than that, I hope you guys got a lot of wisdom, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Cheers, Gabe.
Thank you guys for sticking with us on another episode of the Pursuing Greatness podcast. I hope you got a lot of value out of that guest. Again, the best way to support the show is just to subscribe, like, and share with your friends and family. Also, check out pursuinggreatnesspodcast.com if you want to get more information about what we do and what we offer. I hope you guys have a great day and keep living in integrity with yourselves. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode coming shortly.